Las Vegas police never really closed the case. Years after the murder of Tupac Shakur, there were still more questions than answers. But it wasn't until someone opened a simple garage in Oakland, California, that the mystery took an unexpected turn. They thought they knew Tupac, the poet, the provocateur, the martyr of hip-hop. But no one was ready for what that place was hiding. Not the fans, not the lawyers, not even his own family. And it all started with a rusty padlock. July 1998. 2 years after the Las Vegas shooting. The property was under the name of Mutulu Shakur, his stepfather. But neighbors knew Tupac spent time there when he was looking for peace. A discreet garage, no signs, no graffiti, hidden among trees in an industrial neighborhood. That summer, his mother, Afeni Shakur, obtained a court order to access the property. She didn't want a show. She just wanted closure. She was accompanied by her lawyer, a locksmith, and a representative from Amaru Entertainment, the label managing Tupac's legacy. Afeni asked to be alone at first. They say she placed her hand on the metal door and left it there for a moment. Then the locksmith turned the padlock. The door creaked. And for the first time since his murder, the story took a turn. It wasn't a storage unit. It was a sanctuary. Dust everywhere. An old bicycle, an electric piano, and in the back, 3 shelves covered with tarps. In one corner, a safe. In another, a tape recorder and a DAT player. And in the center, a work table, with yellowed sheets, hand-labeled cassettes, undeveloped photographs. The first documents shocked the team. Lists of unpublished lyrics, poems written in blue ink with corrections and strike-throughs. Some signed with his most intimate alias, Machiavelli. There were folders titled Album 3, Rebellion, Mama Says, Dream Out Loud. Afeni's lawyer began reviewing the materials, and as he lifted one of the folders, a loose sheet fell out. It was a map, not of streets, but of ideas. In the center, written in capital letters, it read, Personal Revolution. Tupac had been planning more than just an album. He was designing a movement. The cassettes were numbered 1 through 25, all dated between February and August 1996, just weeks before his murder. The labels were cryptic. Mother's Tears, Soul Kidnap, Street Poet, Demo 3, With Dre, but without Dre, and one simply said, Farewell. The engineer accompanying Afeni explained that some of the tapes were in DAT format, very fragile. They could only be played once while being digitized. Each tape was handled with gloves. They were placed in airtight envelopes and taken to a studio in Berkeley for recovery. But the lyrics spoke for themselves. One was titled, Letter to My 40-Year-Old Self. In it, Tupac wrote, If you made it this far, don't forget what you swore. Fame is shadow. The people are fire. The verse is your only weapon. Then they opened the safe. It was small, metallic, rusty, hard to crack open. Inside were 2 things, a yellow envelope with the inscription, For Mom, a leather notebook with a magnetic clasp. The envelope contained personal letters, one addressed to Jada Pinkett, another to his sister Sekiwa, and one last, unfinished, that began with, If you're reading this, don't mourn me. But it was the leather notebook that left everyone silent. It had the name Machiavelli engraved on the cover. Inside, it was full of business ideas, screenplay drafts, outlines for charity concerts. One section was titled Shakur Institute for Urban Arts. Tupac wanted to open a community center to train young artists, poets, beatmakers, dancers, and filmmakers. There are kids in the streets with more talent than Spielberg. They just need a camera, not a cell. It was more than rap. It was a vision. And then they found the car. Covered with a navy blue tarp, it was in the back of the garage. A 1996 Jeep Grand Cherokee with expired plates. When they opened the door, the scent of incense filled the air. On the dashboard, a photo of his mother. In the back seat, a backpack. And in the glove box, an unlabeled DAT. It was the last thing they touched that day. The team decided to listen to the tape in a controlled environment. The next day, in Berkeley, the unexpected was revealed. It was an unreleased freestyle. Over a soft beat with a Spanish guitar, Tupac rapped, "I didn't leave, I scattered. Each verse of mine is a seed. And when it rains in the street, you'll remember me." It wasn't a commercial track. It was a testament, an improvised farewell. No filters, no choruses, just his voice. Raw, wounded, powerful. Afeni broke down in tears upon hearing it. The lawyer closed his notebook. No one said a word. It was clear. That garage didn't contain stuff. It held the unopened heart of Tupac Shakur. The unlabeled tape found in the glove box was just the beginning. That raspy, direct voice had sounded again for the first time in years. Not on the radio, not in a remix, but in its rawest form. The engineers in Berkeley were stunned. One of them said later, "We weren't listening to a song. We were listening to his unedited soul." The family understood the weight of what they had in their hands. That garage wasn't a storage space. It was a consciousness archive. And what came next left them even more shaken. The DAT cassettes contained 17 unreleased songs. Not all of them were finished. Some were rough ideas, others alternate takes. But at least 5 seemed complete. Tracks with full structure, choruses, and advanced production. One of them was titled 7 Lives, recorded just weeks before the shooting. In it, Tupac spoke of the weight of fame, betrayal, and the feeling of being marked. They already buried the son of freedom, but they still hear me on every corner. Another track, Black Lotus, mixed tribal drums with dense verses about spirituality and justice. It included references to the prison system, the Black Panthers, and historical figures from post-colonial Africa. But it was a line at the end of the track that left everyone speechless. "If they kill me before I'm 30, let the garage tell the story." That's when everything changed. The archive was moved to a secure location. The exact location was never revealed, but close sources confirmed that the materials were divided into 3 parts: tapes and DATs for digitization, notebooks and handwritten writings classified by year, personal items, clothes, photos, letters, and the Jeep's contents. Afeni's foundation took over everything. They didn't want commercial exploitation. They wanted to preserve an intention. That's when something unexpected appeared. A document titled Thug Code. Written by hand, in black ink, it contained a series of principles. These weren't rhymes. They were commandments. Protect the children. Feed the hungry. Shout when others stay silent. Create art as a shield. Afeni interpreted it as a draft of a manifesto, a guide her son wanted to leave for future generations. The foundation decided to turn that text into the cornerstone of their youth program. But not everything was peaceful. At the end of 1999, a clip from one of the unreleased songs leaked on an underground rap forum. It wasn't mastered, it didn't even have a title, but the voice was unmistakable. It was Pacific. Chaos broke out. Many thought it was a remix. Others swore it was fake. But 2 lines were enough to prove it wasn't. "I recorded this in shadows. If you hear me now, it's not by chance." Fans went crazy. The media lit up. And for the first time in years, Tupac made headlines not for his death, but for what he left alive. The foundation reacted immediately. It wasn't just a leak. It was a violation of the process they had protected for years. An internal investigation traced the source to a studio in San Francisco, where the DATs were being digitized. A rookie technician, without bad intent, had copied the file to show it to a friend. But that file flew through Napster, IRC forums, and mailing lists. Trust was broken. The archive was relocated. Protocols were changed, and the people involved were removed from the project. Afeni refused to take legal action, but she made her position clear. "My son's music is not merchandise. its seed. However, something unusual happened. The leak sparked something no one expected: a joint statement from representatives of Tupac's legacy and that of Biggie Smalls. Both sides denied rumors of a supposed leaked collaboration, but also called for respect. It was the first time they were publicly united, a silent gesture that, for many, marked the symbolic end of the East Coast-West Coast War. Behind the scenes, however, the conversation shifted. Should they share part of Tupac's archive with the world? And the answer was, only if it had a purpose. That's how Project Phoenix was born. A quiet, non-commercial effort to use Tupac's unreleased work in educational projects. It wasn't about releasing posthumous albums, it was about planting ideas. Fragments of verses, instrumentals, spoken reflections were integrated into educational materials. The foundation collaborated with universities, high schools, and arts programs in underserved neighborhoods. It's even said that in a library in Atlanta, there exists a restricted archive accessible to researchers. Among them, a never-published poem called Rebirth, which ends with the line, "I am not what I left. I am what I awakened." The Jeep also found its fate. Fully restored, it was presented only once at the African American Cultural Center in Oakland during a private event. Young scholarship recipients read texts inspired by Tupac's writings, while the car remained illuminated by soft light. Not as a relic, but as a witness. The symbol of a man who, although he died young, lived as if he knew he had no time. Today, the archive continues to grow. Not because of what they find, but because of what it inspires. Each recovered verse, each scanned page, each sketch on a napkin. They're not seeking virality, they're seeking continuity. Afeni passed away in 2016, but before she died, she left this written: "Chris had records, Tupac left blueprints, both were great, but my son dreamed of being eternal." And you? Do you think that garage only had music? Or had Tupac built his own silent revolution? Leave it in the comments and like if you want more deep stories from hip-hop.